lists. And you think of these traders as trading, whiskey and guns, right? Isn't that what we've assumed? But in fact, the things they had the most of were iron kettles and knives, right? And if I'm a woman out here and I've been cooking with an olla or with a basket for a long time, I look at something like this and I think, I want that. I really got to have that thing. That's going to last a long time. I don't have to keep making them. So it becomes, this is a way in which those trade relations are cemented by the things women need to claim a home. Now, you may recognize this shot. This is a painting of Taos Pueblo in the 1940s by the Taos painter Barbara Latham. And of course, that kettle and this painting represent the convergence of many kinds of peoples in places. And you certainly know that about Taos. You can look at this painting and see the automobiles and the wagons. We've got native people, probably Pueblo people, both in blankets but also in blue jeans. We've got women in various forms of dress. They're, of course, converging around the bar. That never happens in Taos, I'm sure, so this is obviously fictional. But this is a place, some of them are obvious dudes, and, there are even women in trousers in this picture. So this is a place of people coming together, and in some ways it seems like a place that where people are getting along pretty well. They're very different from each other, but they're in this place without obvious friction, unlike this 1927 etching by John Sloan titled Knees and Aborigines. So there's a real picture of conflict here. So contrast the kind of chaste and orderly image of the Pueblo women at the dance here with the really kind of arms akimbo, arms around each other, knees showing, they're smoking cigarettes. These very decadent kind of images of Anglos, especially the women, really seeming like the women are, cross-dressing and crossing boundaries of all kinds. Now, Sloan is really emphasizing the dissonance, the edge of chaos, the kind of the conflict-ridden consequences of convergent. But the coming of modern women wasn't just about witnessing and making spectacle. It was also about inhabiting the place. So contrast that with this painting of Amelia Elizabeth White, also by John Sloan from 1934. And you compare her posture with these decadent women, and you see in some ways Anglo women migrants, they're not a monolithic group either. And some come to stay, and they're seeking community and serenity and wisdom and better weather than there was in the places that they came from, like so many of us. She was the daughter of Horace White, who was the first biographer of Abraham Lincoln and editor of the New York Evening Post. And she became the leading philanthropist of Santa Fe, supporter of the Indian Arts Fund and Laboratory of Anthropology, and certainly a patron of the Arts Colony. And this is Amelia Elizabeth White with her sister Martha at their house on Garcia Street around 1925. And as you can see, once again, here is somebody reclaiming an adobe building, an adobe dwelling, as their home. They actually expanded this house, and you can see how it's kind of like going off to the back. And here is, they got the prominent architect William Penhallow Henderson to design and construct a complex of 15 such adobe buildings. So you can see the way in which this kind of simple construction that we've seen before can be expanded and elaborated and turned into a kind of American dream, a real estate dream, a Santa Fe dream, a New Mexico dream. This is T. Harmon Parkhurst took a picture of El Delirio as well, and in 1926 they had a christening for the house that included a mock Mayan rite that I think included throwing somebody into the swimming pool as if it were a sacrifice of a virgin. And the joke, of course, was how did they find one in Santa Fe? Now, we saw, I'm going to skip ahead of here. So remember this picture in the upper left-hand corner of Signora de Pena in her house. And I want you to, in 1912, this is the same house as photographed by Carl Kernberger in 1965. And I want you to see the transformation of this image of a New Mexican home, And so this reminds me of that. Remember that great cartoon, Another Victim of Santa Fe Style, right? Where somebody's fallen over because they have like 15 concho belts on and that kind of thing. So you'll notice the ways in which these objects of use are really being transformed into objects of consumption, and it's another way of claiming a home in the Southwest. A romantic way, certainly a nostalgic way, an aestheticized way, versus a kind of messier history of stress and dispossession on the part of the people who lived there before. Nonetheless, as I say, this is a picture from the 1940s of a Hispana who's adapting to her present with the modern dress and hair, but still, holding a big handful of mud to plaster her house. People like Juliana and Maria Martinez took advantage of the kind of consumption that we saw before. This is a photograph from about 1938, and they're innovating in Pueblo pottery. So you see the black on black wear in front of them. This represents both a revival of a kind of ancient craft, or an ancient art, I should say, but also a response to new people coming into Santa Clara and San Ildefonso. Here is a relative from Santa Clara, Nora Naranjo Morse, and she's both a sculptor and a painter, and this one's called, a sculptor and a poet, and this is called A Well-Traveled Coyote from 1987. She is a member of the celebrated Santa Clara family that includes Rena Swenzel and Tessie Naranjo. And there was a poem that went with this sculpture, and the poet is writing from the point of view of seeing this coyote trickster at JFK Airport in New York. And she describes him as slick and tight down to his Tony Lamas, smiling when a pretty woman passed him, making calculations from behind his New York Times. This is her niece, a sculpture by her niece, Roxanne Swenzel, and some of you may have visited, I'm sure you know Roxanne's work or visited her gallery and studio in the tower at Bouaké. And this is a sculpture titled Broken Hearts, Broken Bowls from the 1990s. And you can see written here both the conquest and devastation and expropriation that are part of this story of the West as a place of contested homes. But it's also an incredibly vital and alive work of art. I mean, look at the toes of this figure. An incredibly sad face, the sagging breast, the broken bowl, but the belly that is, really a symbol of fertility, and those fantastic feet. I can hardly take my eyes off the toes here. The vitality and the whimsy in them. Here's Roxanne Swenzel with another one of her great creations, showing the way in which this is a world that continues to be alive, and she's certainly now gotten involved with sustainable water and agriculture as well. And I think we need to think about the numbers of women that we have yet to know about. I could have done this entire lecture on just women of Taos, had I wanted to. I figured I'd leave that to you. You have an opportunity. You're up here. You know the lay of the land. You know Taos Pueblo. Some of you are from Taos Pueblo, I hope. You are people who are aware of the Jaramillo family. You're aware of Mabel Dodge and Dorothy Brett and Agnes Martin and Bea Mandelman, certainly here at the Harwood. All of you, there's a lot of work to be done and to claim, and a lot of work to claim and explain this place as your home as well as theirs, and so much more to know. So I invite you to continue on the great work. I've tried to show you the ways in which women used the earth in New Mexico, everything from pottery to adobe to real estate, to claim this place as a home. It's not a simple history. It's not a comfortable history. It's an ongoing history and a history that remains contested. But I would argue, if you want to know anything about the West, you have to understand women's history and you have to understand home. Thank you very much. So I've gone on a little bit longer than I wanted to, but I'm happy to take questions or hear comments or be berated or whatever you'd like. Or everybody's ready for dinner. This is the beauty of a 6 p.m. lecture, because you can still get dinner. It's brilliant planning. Any thoughts? You're like, why didn't you do Mabel? What about Mabel's house? Maybe next time. Maybe you'll have me back. That would be great. Well, thank you all very, very much.
I absolutely want to thank Dr. Scharff for a fine lecture, and I want to thank you all for coming out this evening as we continue to learn about our history. And so please make yourself comfortable and maybe informally ask some questions before you take off for dinner, okay? Thanks so much.